Hey drivers, have you thought about becoming your own company? Have you thought you'd like to get your own authority and DOT number, but you just don't know how to go about doing it? Well, call J.J. Keller and Associates. They can help you get the proper registration and credentials that you need to operate legally. They protect drivers from penalties and out-of-service orders as a result of not having the proper authority. They save drivers time by filing their paperwork and ensuring everything is correct. Drivers, they also help you with unified carrier registration, US DOT and MC numbers, MCS 150 updates, year-around authority monitoring, and plenty more. Drivers, if you're looking to become your own company and you want your own authority number and DOT number today, call J.J. Keller and Associates at 888-601-2017. That's 888-601-2017 and tell them TalkCDL sent you. Thank you. Hey drivers, are you thinking about becoming a lease operator? Well, NCI is leasing out 1 to 2-year-old Kenworth T680 double bunk condo tractors, fully loaded with APU and fridge. Plus, the company is owned by their own product. That's right, they deliver mainly their own freight, which means your business will be thriving for a long time to come. 844-311-7076. That's 844-311-7076, and tell them TalkCDL sent you. Please, thank you. So recently I read an article about a Massachusetts DOT cop, trooper, statey, whatever he was, pulled over a trucker that had a lot of lug nuts that it was missing on his truck. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it was wobbling or whatever the case is. I actually had saved the article, and I sent you an article. The article I sent you was on the one from last year where the guy is in prison or whatever the case is. Is that what it is?
Yeah, he was charged with homicide by vehicle in the second degree.
And this is, it's been in the, it's, what's funny is in one of the articles, I don't know if it's in that article that you're going to read, it's also going to talk about another tractor trailer where in Maine, a driver's tire came off and killed a state trooper on the side of the road helping somebody. Read to me that article. I want to talk about that for just a little bit with you for a few minutes, if you could. Go ahead and read it. And this is from like August of last year, I believe, right?
Yes, August 11th. Or I'm sorry, August 13th is when he was charged, when he was arrested. August 11th is when the accident happened.
Go ahead and read it. And what state was that in?
Georgia.
Oh, so this one's in Georgia. Mm-hmm. I don't know why I thought it was out in the Midwest. Okay, go ahead.
No, it happened in Georgia. Deputies identified the semi-truck driver as 31-year-old Urian Bello of Miami. According to the booking report, Georgia State Patrol officers arrested him around 2 p.m. on August 13th. Georgia State Patrol officers arrested Bello and took him into Peach County Law Enforcement Center. Authorities charged him with the following: homicide by vehicle in second degree, unsafe vehicle or equipment, defective tires. Authorities have not set a bond for Bello. A woman was killed in an accident on I-75 after a tire comes off of an 18-wheeler truck and goes through the windshield of her car. Peach County Coroner Carrie Rooks says that incident happened on August 11th around 2 p.m. in Byron, Georgia. Rooks says that 36-year-old Jennifer Thomas of Gray was traveling I-75 southbound when the wheel came off of an axle of an 18-wheeler that traveled in the opposite direction. The coroner says that the wheel jumped the median and went through Thomas's windshield. Rooks says that he pronounced Thomas dead at the scene. Rooks also says that Thomas's mom, dad, and a child occupied the car. He says their injuries were non-life-threatening.
Okay. Oops. I had my mic turned down. Sorry about that. Okay, so bottom line is, you got a trucker. He's on I-75. He's
going northbound.
He's going north, and the victims in the passenger vehicle are going south. They're going the opposite direction.
Correct.
His wheel comes off and crosses the median. Obviously, it had to cross the median.
He says it jumped it, yeah.
Jumped it, crossed it, went over into the oncoming. How old was she? 22? It said
36.
36. And it was funny because I was watching a video the other day of a tire that was going down the road. Mm-hmm. Did you see it?
Yeah, we're trying to figure out where it actually came from.
And all of a sudden it just jumped. It jumped over the medium. I don't know if it's that exact one or what.
I don't know.
I don't know. But it all of a sudden just head-ons a car. And it looks like it destroys the car. Mm-hmm. But you got to remember, it's not just a tire. There's also a steel rim inside of it. Right? Mm-hmm. So this 36-year-old...
Yeah, she was 36.
36-year-old lady is killed pretty much instantly. It sounds like she was... Because it said they pronounced her dead at the scene.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that had to be a nightmare scene for the family was there. It wasn't... at the end, you hear that, they got to be in an accident and then probably clear their head for a second and look over, and there is their daughter and mother.
Well, it didn't say it was her child. It says a child.
Oh, I thought okay, a child.
So I don't know. It could have been a niece, nephew. It could have been hers. Who knows?
Okay. So anyways, what? I just shook my head. Anyways, they're family members. Her parents were there, right? Is that what it said? Mm-hmm. Was it? Yes or no?
Yes, it said mom and dad.
Okay. So all I'm saying is, what a nightmare for everybody. Now, he's in jail, and it said with no bond. Mm-hmm. And you got to ask yourself, why? Why no bond? And you see, I think a lot of truck drivers are under the impression that it's the shop's fault. When mechanical failures happen, because I've interviewed them over the years, so have you, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of them are like, it's the shop's fault. It was loaded wrong when I rolled over. My wheel came off. They didn't put the wheel on right at the last stop.
My favorite is, I've been telling them that it needs to be fixed.
Well, that's that's totally different. What you just said was the truck driver knew and was fighting with the company to get something fixed. That is a big difference. And, that could actually be, you don't know in this case. And so let's play this scenario out for a second. I'm glad, Ruthann, this is why you're on this show, because you just jogged my mind about something else that could happen. But here's ultimately the responsibility of who?
The driver.
Who is the last one that's supposed to inspect that vehicle?
The driver. It's his ship.
Every time he drives that vehicle, he's supposed to do a walk around. He's supposed to look at those lugs. Now, I don't know what the case was on this one exactly, how the wheels came off. Did it say?
No,
I'm about to read one that was recent in Massachusetts, and they had a picture of it with, I believe, 3 or 4 lugs on it. And I'm going to tell you something. I want to call. We've got an advisor that we have that comes on the show every now and then. What's his name? Sensei
Hoover.
Trooper Hoover, the DOT state trooper up in Indiana, and actually he's got a lot of truck driver friends. He's actually really cool. We're gonna call him here in a few minutes and get his take on all this. But let me read to you what happened recently here in Mass. Let me just go ahead and read it, because it's interesting that this is going on a lot lately. It says a Massachusetts state trooper pulled the brakes on a potentially deadly semi-truck last weekend as it drove down the Massachusetts Turnpike on a half-loose wheel in West Stockbridge, police said. So it says half loose. It says, luckily, we caught it before that makeshift attachment to the axle failed and the wheel flew off and killed a motorist, the Massachusetts State Police wrote on social media, attached to an image of the wheel, stupid and frightening. That was what they titled the thing. And so I'm looking at it here. Let me just show you a picture. Nobody can see it, but I'm sure people have seen it. Mm-hmm. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 4 lugs, and then there's 4, it looks like holes. I don't know if it looks like some might have snapped off. But bottom line is this. It doesn't really matter what condition it is. What matters is that every one of you truck drivers inspect your truck before you drive it. Because if you're driving for a really crappy company, that's no excuse.
No.
If you've been fighting, and Ruth Ann brings up a good point. What if you're with a company where you're telling somebody, and I've had drivers tell me over the years, Ruth Ann, I keep telling these people these tires are bald, and I'm getting sick of it. It's unsafe, but they keep saying they're going to fix it, and they don't. I keep telling them that I had one guy the other day I was talking to him, he said, my steering wheel has got so much play in it, it's crazy, it's dangerous.
I think that because you're the driver of the truck, it's your ship, you can refuse to drive it. I mean, it sucks because you're not going to be earning an income when those tires aren't going. But if you're not the owner of the actual tractor, you're not the owner and responsible for it, then I think that you have the right to say, I'm either not going to drive it, you're going to have to supply me a different vehicle, or I can report you if they won't fix it and you're not going to earn any money, then you can report them.
Absolutely. Listen, you bring up a valid point. I think a lot of truck drivers, I'm going to tell you what truck drivers are probably in more fear than the truck drivers that are not, Ruth Ann. And you know yourself, when you get a truck driver that has maybe a few speeding tickets, maybe he's got a DUI, maybe he's got a list of stuff to where he can barely get a job, and he ends up working for some crappy company that doesn't really stay up on their equipment. Mm-hmm. Therefore, it's hard for him to quit that job because it may be the only job he can get. So now here's a truck driver saying, hey man, please fix this stuff before we get in trouble, before we get into an accident. And the company keeps putting off and putting off and putting off. You know what my advice is? And I think Trooper Hoover told us before, he's had one or two truck drivers pull in and say, would you please inspect my truck? And specifically, excuse me, that was a Belge. That was my Jake break burp. No, seriously. He's told us that he's had drivers stop and say, will you please inspect my truck, and maybe even point at something just so they would get put out of service. So they're not now responsible for forcing the company to do it. What they did was they just let DOT see the violation, and guess what? Now the company has no choice, and the driver doesn't get fired because the driver, he's not trying to push his weight around with a company that maybe he's stuck at.
The driver would rather get that on his PSP than an accident or something severe happen.
How about we just go ahead and call Hoover?
I got the scoop more on what happened with that accident. I just searched it a little further.
Let's call Hoover real quick, and you can talk there. You want to do that, or you want to talk a little more?
It don't matter.
It's up to you. You want to tell us before I call him, or what?
Well, it says that it wasn't just one tire. It was actually two. The accident happened, and...
Which accident are you talking about?
The August 11th from the...
Oh, the one where the girl was killed. Okay.
The suit says two of the wheels on the left side of a U.S. Express transport truck driven by Bello. The wheels crossed the median, and one of them crashed into the hood and windshield of an SUV driven by Jennifer Thomas, who then hit another vehicle and crashed into a concrete median, killing her immediately. The lawsuit lists 10 counts, which allege negligence by Bello for failing to inspect his trailer to ensure safe operation, and negligence by the carrier U.S. Express Transport, including failure to properly inspect and maintain vehicles in their fleet, and for negligence in training and retaining an employee who posed a risk to others.
I just want to make sure, and when you say U.S. Express, you're spelling it is the U.S.
with the X Express.
So,
then he was charged with second-degree vehicular homicide, unsafe vehicle equipment, and defective tires.
And you see, before we bring Hoover on, this is what I'm trying to get across to drivers. We love these drivers. And therefore, you may not like people telling you that, to watch your back when it comes to this. A lot of people don't want to hear, okay, get your ass out there and inspect the truck. Boo-hoo, stop being a jerk. I need to work. I don't have time, blah, blah, blah. I mean, let's be honest. I drove for many years. I couldn't tell you how many times I've seen people get up in the morning, go in, take a leak, whatever, come back out at 20 minutes later, jump in their truck and never do a walk around. And they've been at the truck stop all night. Mm-hmm. How many times do people do that? Mm-hmm. And I'm just saying, for your own good, Look at what's happening to some of these guys. Here's another one real quick, just before we call Hoover. Listen to this. This was, in the same article, it says, in December, police arrested a Georgia man after a tire flew off of his Dodge Ram and fatally hit a young woman in the head while she was walking her dog. So it's not just tractor trailers. If you're out there and you're at home in a POV, okay, in your personal vehicle, and you aren't up to date on it, trust me, you can't blame somebody else for the vehicle you're driving. Everybody is responsible for knowing if something is wrong with that vehicle or not. And here's a guy with a pickup. If you read down a little bit, it shows where the guy was up the road trying to hobble home or whatever. He didn't have a wheel, and he was on the side of the road trying to figure it out. Meanwhile, back at the scene, there was a dead girl. You know, her boyfriend found her. The wheel came off and snapped her spine and broke her neck. They tried to save her. She was dead before she got to the doctor. Another case where a semi-truck last year, wheels came off and hit a trooper helping somebody. This was in the state of Maine, and killed him. Now, so it's not like it happens here and there. It happens enough to where we should all be taking advice. Okay, and there's a reason why. It's called a pre-trip. It wasn't just made up for you guys to get a little exercise and walk around your damn truck. Okay, you talk. I keep saying this. You talk to a million miler, a guy that's got a 1,000,000 mile safe driving award. He's got the ring. He's got the T-shirt, and he's got a really nice trucking life. You ask him, how did you get there? How did you get to that 1,000,000 mile benchmark with no accidents? See, I've talked to truck drivers and they go, "That's impossible. You got to hit something."
No.
Bullshit.
We've seen them.
There's plenty of good truckers out there that never have anything. You know why? Because they say, "I get out." When I have to back up, I don't care if it's in the middle of a field. I get out and I make sure there ain't some little bar or something that's going to pop up through my fuel line. Okay? Before I leave, I get out and I check my everything that I'm allowed to check. I check everything, especially my lugs, especially everything. Look at what Trooper Hoover said. He's got this saying. We'll talk to him about it. The dry powdery rust. Follow the rust line, and it'll lead you to something that's loose. It's a pretty amazing thing that he does. I never knew that, but he'll tell you if you see a trail of rust running down something, odds are something's loose on your rig. Let's call Hoover. Let's give Hoover a call. See what he's doing. Let's see if we can get him on here.
Hello.
I knew we'd have him up too loud. Hoover, what's up? This is Troy and Ruth at TalkCDL.
Hey, Troy. How you doing, buddy?
Good, brother. How you been?
Oh, pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
You staying safe up there with the coronavirus?
Yep, just doing the whole social distancing and online trainings and all sorts of that good stuff. So
I mean, before we get into what we're talking about topic-wise here, it just popped into my head. Do you have to wear a mask and everything when you pull people over when you're dealing with them? Are you all masked up?
Well, they've basically converted us to more responsive. So, like, basically, if there's a crash or something, they want us to work that. But as far as just the routine truck inspections, they don't want us out having that contact. So really, I've not done a normal truck inspection in a month and a half. So I'm kind of having withdrawals.
Oh wow, yeah. By the way, we got State Trooper Hoover, DOT officer of the state of Indiana, with us here, just so everybody knows who he is. He's been on the show before. Ruth Ann, you sound like you got a question for Trooper Hoover.
Well, I was just going to say the drivers are really happy right now. Probably, they're like feeling like kids getting away from the candy store with some free candy right now.
Oh, absolutely. With the scale houses closed and everything else. Sure, there's a lot of guys out there that are enjoying this time. That's for sure.
Yeah. So Trooper Hoover, we started a conversation here just a little while ago. Recently, in fact, within the last week or so, a DOT officer in Massachusetts pulled over a semi truck. He only had four. There's a picture right on the article. He had 4 lugs I guess that it sounds like the tire might have been even somehow he spotted this guy moving. So I'm guessing the wheel might have been wobbling or whatever the case is. First off, and we've seen some of your pictures where you've inspected guys with 2 and 3 lugs and you put them right out of service right away, obviously. Have you ever spotted one going down the road where you could tell that wheel is not safe?
Yes, and I've got quite a funny story. He's a good buddy of mine now, but I had stopped a driver, and then about a week or so later, I saw him coming back down the road, and he was pulling one of these trailers that had the Dayton wheels. So, you know, those, of course, are notorious for everything can be tight, but they still look like they're wobbling down the road. But this one was really wobbling, and I just had to laugh because he drove by and he gave me the biggest wave and got on the CB, and he was like, "Hey, Mr. Hoover, how are you?" And I was like, "Stop the truck right now." And he's like, hits the brakes, pulls over, and I showed him, and oh gosh, that wheel was about ready to come off, and he was like, "Oh my gosh," and he's like, I couldn't see it, and he goes, "Here, hop up in the," and I hopped up in the truck and looked in the mirror, and just the way the wheel was, you couldn't hardly see it. So yeah, I've run across that before, a wheel about ready to come off, and just how quick it can go from 1 or 2 loose lugs to, oh gosh, you know, wheels flying off, getting ready to hurt somebody.
Yeah, I was telling Ruth Ann that you have a philosophy with the dry powdery rust. I mean, if you follow the trail, it's usually going to lead you to something that is loose on the vehicle, which should really help drivers in their inspections daily.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's kind of the mantra that I have is, you know, look for that dry powdery rust, because all the time, you know, even when I'm training new inspectors, it's like have some common sense. If something just breaks, and you catch it, it's gonna look shiny. It's gonna look, you know, you could tell. But something that's streaking powdery rust, it's been there a little while.
Hey, Trooper.
Procedure. Yes, sir.
Every now and then your voice gets muffled, like you're looking away from the phone or something.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's perfect right there.
There we go. My microphone fell down away from the.
That's all right. Right now you sound perfect. So anyway, so we brought up an article. So we started looking things up after this happened. And so we brought up an article, and recently in Georgia, a semi, I don't know if you hear all the stories, but a semi truck wheels came off, the tandems came off, and he was on I-75 north or south?
He was north in Peach County.
He was in Georgia, and then his tandems crossed over into the oncoming and caused a horrible wreck and ended up killing a 36-year-old woman while her mother and father were in the car and a child. So it must have been a horrible scene, all because this is what it comes down to. We've been talking about this. It doesn't matter what mechanic worked on it. Doesn't matter who did what to your truck. Ultimately, you're the guy that's got to inspect it, and then you got to make the decision whether I'm going to drive that truck or not. And if you make the decision when there's 2 or 3 lugs on there, or even if you don't, a lot of drivers that don't actually do their inspection, you get in that truck, everybody's just going to assume naturally you drove it knowing that it had 2 or 3 lugs on it only.
Exactly, and that's something I'm real big, obviously, looking into is, and here 5 or 6 years ago, it may be even longer, it may be closer to 10, we had a city officer killed in Indiana. Him and a couple other officers were working along the interstate, working a crash, and a semi drove by, lost a set of duals, and those duals rolled into the crash scene and hit the officer and killed him. So, and that's just something that, we've seen where the lugs will come off. We've seen even where going to the extent of not checking to make sure you got adequate, fluid in your bearings, or checking the wheel seals, because that'll happen too. A wheel seal will go bad, all that oil or grease will come out, and then it leads to overheating, and that thing will overheat and melt off. and then the whole wheel assembly, brake drum, everything else comes off as well. So yeah, it's just trying to get the drivers back in the mindset of, hey guys, take your time, walk around, take a flashlight, really just glance in and look things over, because things are gonna start showing you, hey, something may not be right here or something may not be right there.
What kind of a fine do you give out to a driver that, say, has half of his lug nuts missing on a wheel?
The way it works in the state of Indiana, every county sets their own fine amount for infraction violations, and those go down as an infraction. So like this county here, if I wrote a ticket for, broke missing wheel fastener or something like that, then it could be upwards of $150. But what the bigger issue is, and the bigger problem, is the CSA points, because once you list a violation and then you times it by 10 in any category as an out of service, that is what really impacts these drivers and carriers and these guys, is those CSA points. So, so that's usually the bigger kick in the butt, is the CSA points versus just $100 ticket.
I have a question. We're discussing violations. There was a driver that had spoke to us, and this driver had a lot of violations. I think like 15 violations on his MVR. And we were looking at, because he was in Pennsylvania, and he still had an active license. And we're researching to see how many violations do you need to have before they actually suspend your license. And some of it was a little different, and they were saying about whether or not it was in your state that you got the violation or out of the state. What is the laws with Indiana?
We have a different point system, and then once you attain so many points, and once you said that, I was like, oh man, I'm kind of rusty. I can't remember exactly how many points it is, but with different moving violations, basically the BMV has a different system on when they'll suspend a driver, and then a lot of times with the CSA and stuff like that, drivers will get these warnings and go, oh, it's just a warning, it's not going to impact me. But then the CSA points is what turns around, and then the feds can actually come back, and if you get so many CSA points on moving violations, they can basically take the driver's CDL as well. So
wow. So you kind of get it hit. You're basically, I don't want to say getting hit by all directions, but that's more important why you need to not get so many violations, because not only can it go from a state, but it could go federal too.
Exactly. It's all if it's documented on a violation or if it's just cited into traffic.
Yeah, this guy legitimately had, like she said, 15 moving violations, couple reckless drivings. He had one ticket, was like 127 and a 60 or something like that, Ruthann, or a 70. It was like a 57 over, and he had two of them. He had 220 overs. He had tickets in California, Virginia, Pennsylvania, recklesses. I mean, it was amazing it was amazing that Pennsylvania hadn't suspended his license. I was amazed at it because we actually had him checked out.
And two, this kind of goes, man, it brings me back, but there's like 38, 40 some states that have basically, if the states are in this pact, basically what they'll do is if I get stopped in, say, Arkansas for speed, then Arkansas will notify the state of Indiana and say, hey, state of Indiana, Brent Hoover got stopped in this time for doing this. In some states, they don't communicate back and forth. So we've seen it where something will be documented on an inspection as a ticket, but then we'll never see it on the driver's record or vice versa. So sometimes getting states to communicate back and forth is also a hard problem.
Okay. So going back to this real quick, I just wanted to touch on one thing Ruthann had brought up before you came on when it comes to drivers driving faulty equipment. And, you know, sometimes we've heard drivers telling us, well, I've told my boss a million times I got a bald tire or I got bad brakes, and they just won't fix them. And the problem, Trooper Hoover, with some drivers, some of them might have they might have, like, you know, their past history was not too good. They had a few speeding tickets. They might have messed up to the point where only one or two carriers will hire them. So they're kind of almost like a slave, or almost like kind of stuck there. It's almost like they're a prisoner at that company, because the company knows, okay, I hired this guy and he had a DUI 2 years ago. Nobody else is going to hire him. And so this guy's now stuck having to drive faulty equipment. And I told Ruth Ann, I believe you had told me before, you've had some truck drivers pull in and say, would you please inspect me? just so you knock them out of service, so they are forced. And I'm just saying, maybe some of these drivers that are listening might want to do the same thing. Pull into the nearest DOT station and get an inspection if your boss really isn't wanting to fix your truck. What do you think?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And another thing too is in the federal regulations, and if a driver wants to look this up, in 392, and where they've got it listed, it says ill or fatigued driving, and then it's an interpretation. And in that interpretation, it says a motor carrier cannot force a driver to knowingly violate the federal motor carrier safety regulations. Now, some people would say, yeah, but that's just referring to driving while ill or fatigued or whatever. And it's like, no, that's just where it was interpreted. That's basically stating, you know, if a motor carrier is forced, you know, they cannot force a driver to violate a federal regulation. So if the regulation states you can't drive with a bald tire, and they're telling you, yes, you drive, then basically it tells you that you can make a complaint with OSHA. You can also make a complaint, you know, with the national hotline, if they go to the FMCSA website, where they can report unsafe practices by motor carriers. And then what that does, that goes into the feds, and the feds trickle it down to the states, and then the states get a hold of that, and we basically show up on their doorstep, and we'll say, okay, you know, there's this complaint of you operating with bald equipment. We want to see all your vehicles right now. And then, yep, all these vehicles have bald, you know, and then that basically goes down the chain and takes care of there. But, or absolutely, if you've got a known issue and you've got a DOT inspector local in your area, and this is where it's nice to have those back and forth positive relationships with your local DOT, because a lot of drivers think we're just out there to get them and do. No, the big thing is we want to see everyone go home safe, and that includes the driver. Mm-hmm. You know, so if you've got a way to approach them and work with them, it's going to benefit both sides. You know, and I've got plenty of people that want to come through and, hey, you know, I even had a friend of mine bought a truck and was like, hey, I'm gonna bring it in before I go and get my annual inspection done, because I want you to look it over, and you tell, you know, you basically write it up and you tell them what to fix. But you know, just having that working relationship can go a long way on that. And
if they do, like, where they do file the report with FMCSA, that's anonymously too, isn't it?
Yes, that can be done anonymously, to where, you know, the carrier would not, we're not going to knock on the door and say, hey, your driver, Billy Joe Johnson, he called in and said on this date that you refused to do this. And then again, too, I've run across the big thing I noticed was one time a motor carrier invited us in, and I was there answering questions and doing different things. And me and the safety director the year before had talked about, hey, this following year, let's set up just a little pre-trip quiz. You know, let's bring out a truck and trailer. And when we got there, you know, there was like one tire was underinflated, one axle had 3 lug nuts loose, you know, One was like the truck was missing a fire extinguisher. So she had 10 different violations set up. And it was so we were basically having people come up, drivers, trainers, new drivers, saying, okay, here's the clipboard, go do your pre-trip and come back. And she was just floored, the highest person. And these weren't complicated hidden things. They were basic things. But we were seeing the number of things that they were writing up as violations that were nowhere close to violations. And through our conversation, I was like, you know what? The big thing is drivers, make sure what you're complaining to the mechanic about is a valid mechanical thing. Talk to that mechanic, because we had guys writing up stuff like, and I won't ever forget this. There was a guy come up and he's like, well, I want my trainee to go through this. And she handed him 2 clipboards and he goes, we only need one. And she goes, no, I want you to go through it. He was standing there talking all big and big game. But then when he come back, his trainee had gotten like 7 out of 10. And the trainer had only got like 4 out of 10.
Wow.
So we're like, okay, but looking at some of the stuff that he was writing up as violations, and they weren't. And then that led me to kind of talk with her and go, you know what? How many things? And then we pulled later on in the day, I pulled one of the mechanics aside and said, hey, how many times do you get these pre-trips where stuff is wrote up and you go through them and the vast majority are not issues? And he goes, oh, we get it all the time. Well, what they're doing is they're bringing in these trucks trying to solve all the stuff that's not there, that the actual legit stuff is being overlooked. So, it's drivers, go back to the basics, work with your mechanics a little bit. It goes back to treat everybody like you'd want to be treated,
Sounds like safety should go and annually have, refresher courses on pre-trips for company-wide.
Absolutely.
Good idea.
Especially when when faulty equipment can, devastate a company, especially some of the smaller ones,
That's a great idea. Actually they
have driver appreciation week. They should have, refresher safety week.
I like that. Go over the pre-trip,
Exactly.
even though they're supposed to know the pre-trip, before they even pass their CDL. It's probably something to drill into their head every year. Give them a bonus.
Oh yeah. And when I went and took my CDL, I went and got my CDL on my own this time last year. And me knowing what I know about inspecting and then going through the CDL test portion, yeah, you're saying I'm going to look at the rim, check for cracks loose, but then a lot of these drivers, you start to talk with them a little bit, and they may not, in their offense, they may not have a mechanical background. Like it's one time I stopped this gal, big name company, big name carrier, and was looking the truck over and noticed the suspension component was broken. And I mean, like the whole rear axle was shifted. And you could see the wear marks on the frame, wear marks on the suspension. And I said, come here, look at this. And I pointed it out and got in and was showing her. And she's like, I was never told to look at anything like that. I was never told. And it was like, you know what? I believe you. I believe the fact that you was probably never pointed at, pointed here, or look at this, because, and I had to laugh because just before all this chaos started, I stopped this guy and he goes, hey, I noticed you was looking around a long time on the trailer. And I said, yeah, I found some suspension bolts loose. And he goes, well, that's impossible. It's a 2020 trailer. I said, no, and it was funny because I took him back and he goes, dang, you're pretty darn good. You really, and I had to laugh a little bit. And he's like, well, that's, I'll have to add that to my pre-trip, and I'm thinking, but in the back of my head, I'm thinking, this is supposed to be part of your pre-trip every single day. You shouldn't have to add this to your pre-trip.
I think I'll add all 18 wheels in next time.
Yeah,
It is an
exactly.
18-wheeler.
You mean I got to have lights and a bumper? And, you gotta have that stuff. But
how do you check the air pressure in the fifth wheel?
I know it. And
wow.
But so I'll be the first to say, when it comes to writing tickets and warnings, I write a bunch of warnings because I try to really talk with the driver, see what kind of response I get from them, and kind of judge their training level on it. And I try to treat every stop as a way to show them something so they can improve on themselves. The ones that I really love to write tickets to are those, well, I've been driving 20 years and you don't know crap, and I've been a trainer for the last 15 years and you don't know jack. It's like, okay, fine, buddy. Here's your ticket. Here's your out of service. Sit here for 3 hours and wait on the service guy,
Yeah, I only do 45 pre-trips an hour compared to your one a day, Mr. Trucker.
Yeah.
You should know what you're doing.
But then again, and when I say that, I don't want people to think, oh, this guy's a jerk or something. But no, I learn a lot from drivers. There's been many times the old school drivers, we'll sit there and talk an hour. The inspection was done in 15 minutes, but we're talking another 45, just shooting the breeze and learning from each other. So,
I'll tell you something you taught me today, and I'm going to give every trucker this advice from now on. When you're buying a new rig, run it by a DOT inspection and see what they get written up, and then take it back to the dealership or whoever's selling it to you and say, hey, this is according to DOT. You need to fix this. Probably the easiest way to get them to actually fix it and throw it in on the deal because DOT wrote it up. That's pretty smart, actually.
Yeah. Well, perfect example of that was about 7 or 8 years ago. This truck come in, and one of the inspectors selected it for an inspection. And the driver's like, oh, you ain't going to find nothing. It's a brand new truck. And the inspector was like, yeah, that's the reason I brought you in. Brand new truck. I just want a quick clean one. I want to get out of here. So he went underneath it, was inspected. We'll notice one of the slack adjusters was totally missing. So he wrote him up for missing slack adjuster. And the driver's like, oh, it's a brand new truck. How's it? And he goes, yeah, but come here and look. And you guys have all seen brand new rigs. When they build them at the factory, they paint everything. I mean, airlines are painted, airbags are painted. I mean, everything is painted. But what he was saying was, he's like, look on the output shaft of the S-cam shaft. He goes, it's all painted over. He goes, if the slack adjuster was here when it was built, it would have been painted. There would have been a bare spot. So he wrote him up and, went about it. Well, about 2 weeks later, the inspector got a phone call, and it was the owner of this company. And he said, hey, I just wanted to give you some background. He goes, that truck has 3 previous inspections before you pulled him in that day. He goes, first off, my mechanic got his ass ripped because our mechanic passed it. He goes, the dealership, their mechanic got a butt chewing because he had passed it. And then the factory had signed off that it was good. So 3 times it had been looked over, but yet it took the 4th time our inspector underneath it to go, wait a minute, slack adjuster's missing.
Isn't that something?
So I love it. If you want to get an inspector charged, it is tell him it's a new truck. You ain't going to find anything because all we hear is game on. Here we go.
Is that a challenge?
Challenge accepted. I forget what show or something, but when they were like challenge accepted, it's like.
Well, some people they'll say, oh, they'll even make something up, but no, that's not the case usually.
See, you've heard that. That is my biggest pet peeve. It's like, no, this truck is literally 1 million different pieces and parts with glue and bolts and screws hold this thing together. I do not need to make anything up. You know, something. The big thing there is the attitude. The attitude at the time of the stop. If you come across as being a jerk about it, yeah, we're going to open the playbook. We're going to go through everything with a fine-tooth comb. And guess what? When you go through things with fine-tooth comb, you find little things. And when you're going, you know what? I was just trying to tell the guy to slow down a little bit. He proceeded to cuss me up one side the other. So you know what? I was supposed to be home 15 minutes ago, but forget it. I'm going to go through this, and I'm going to document every little thing I find wrong. So, try to have a little bit of patience. Try to have some common courtesy, and 9 times out of 10, that's going to help you go a lot further down the road.
So attitude is almost everything. Not quite.
And like I said, attitude, yes, that's the biggest part of it. But you know what? You can have the best attitude, but I'm sorry, I'm still going to write you a ticket. If your license is suspended, I'm still going to write you a ticket. If you falsified, there's some stuff, it's like, I'm sorry, my hands are tied. I have to write you a ticket.
What about
it's too much of a safety?
What about
what
about the earlier topic of you pull someone in, he's got only 3 or 4 lug nuts? I mean, is that, I don't care how nice the guy is, maybe even gives you a chocolate bar and shines your shoes for you, but it's still ultimately he got in that truck and drove it with only 3 lug nuts on the damn tire. I mean, are you ticketing that guy or are you letting him off?
Me personally, like I said, I'm very lax when it comes to tickets, but an out of service is an out of service, and like I tell them, listen, yeah, I'm going to place you out of service here. I'm not going to pour salt in the wound, write you a ticket. I'd much rather you take $150 and get it repaired. In a perfect story for that, and I could kill you guys with stories, but perfect example of that was I was out on my stretch of highway doing an inspection. I look up my rearview mirror, and about a half mile away, I see a truck driving real slow, semi-truck along the shoulder. And I thought, well, and I saw him stop about, 250 yards behind me. He finally stops. So I get done. I flip around. I go back and check on him. Said, hey, bud, you all right? He said, yeah. And by the time I, walked up on him, I saw he had a blown tire, and he was creeping up alongside the shoulder. And he said, yeah. He goes, I blew a tire about 3 miles back, and I was driving along the shoulder, and he goes, then I saw you and thought, I better stop. I don't want to get in trouble. And I said, no, bud, much better to ease off the road, find you a safe spot. And I said, in fact, half mile up here on the right is a big vacant parking lot. I'll stay behind you. Why don't you pull up into that parking lot? He's like, okay. So I follow him up there, and he gets turned around. I come walking back up to the truck, and he's got his license and logbook. He goes, well, I guess you're going to want to see this. And I said, no. I said, you're fine. He goes, you're not going to write me a ticket for having flat tires? I said, no. I said, you did the right thing. You knew you had a problem. You were looking for a safe spot, and you're getting off the road. I said, you're going to have enough money wrapped up and get the tire fixed and enough downtime for that. And he's like, oh, well, you're a real nice fella. And I said, just trying to apply some common sense. And no sooner than I said that, here came an intermodal container semi blowing by another car in the passing lane, had a flat tire throwing chunks of rubber in the air. And I said, hold that thought. I'm going to go get you a buddy. And I chased that guy down,
You go get your brother.
Chased him down and brought him back, parked him right next to him, did an inspection, and put him out of service. And when I finished up paperwork, I said, all right, you see the big difference there? I said, because I told the guy, I said, hey, when I got him stopped, I said, you realize you got a blown tire? You're throwing chunks? He goes, I go to Pilot and get fixed. I'm like, no, the next Pilot doesn't have services, and the next Pilot in Chicago, and that's still 3 hours away. I'm like, no, you're not going. You're going to turn around and be placed out of service. Plus, like I said, he was out in the passing lane, passing a car, throwing chunks of rubber. So big difference there. Try to have a little bit of common sense.
What's ironic, you bringing this up? We had on the page the other day, there was an argument between drivers that, running those super singles, okay, versus running, tandems, and so the one guy was like, well, if you get a flat on a super single, you really can't limp, to get to somewhere. And another guy's like, well, actually a trucking company posted, they said, well, we checked with DOT and they really don't want you going anywhere. When you get a flat, they'd rather you pull off side of the road and call road service. Now, going on what you're saying is you're judging this and you're saying, no, here's a guy, driver one, he pulled over. He's obviously looking for a place to get pulled over. So he's just trying to limp maybe to the next exit, or taking his time and not hurting anybody, versus the guy that's just blown down the road in the hammer lane. Just, obviously he wasn't on his way to fix his tire, that guy. So you're saying right out of your professional trooper lungs that right? No, seriously, it goes with that argument the other day that if a guy's limping, what they call it limping, if you got a tire in your flat, he's trying to limp to the next stop, versus a guy that's maybe trying to go 100 miles to get back to the terminal and just let them fix it. There's a big difference there.
It is, and you're exactly right. The next officer could look at it, and I've seen the inspection reports and seen it where guys will blow a tire, they'll pull off the road, and then this is my biggest pet peeve, biggest embarrassment, is when a trooper will pull up, say, hey, bud, you all right? He's like, yeah, I blew a tire. I'm sitting here waiting on road service. And then they will do an inspection, and then they will place the guy out of service. That is my biggest pet peeve is, come on, troop. He's pulled off the road. He's waiting on road service. Cut the guy a break. But then, again, where it comes with trying to get drivers more educated, some of our inspectors need to get a little more educated as well. I'm not, and I'll be the first one to say, are we perfect? No. When I try to train my new inspectors, when I go out and teach new inspectors, I try to tell them, try to have some common sense, and I tell them these stories. There's a big difference here, and the same thing, if a guy's limping down the shoulder, think about that guy that's coming out, guy or gal, that's going to be trying to change that tire alongside the road. I would much rather they do that in a parking lot than along the road with the dang idiots driving 70, 80 miles an hour next to them, not moving over. There's been too many crashes, too many fatalities with that. Why even risk it? So, when I hear law enforcement do that just, I'm like, come on, guys. We already got a big enough black eye. Don't do that. But again, and always, and if you do blow a tire, just and an officer rolls up on scene, ask him, hey, would you mind if I did go a mile up the road, not the speed limit, but would you care if I go up the road and get off the road? They may say, yeah, go ahead, I'll follow you. Or they may say, nope, you got to sit right here. Okay, that's fine.
Wow.
Then do that. But
I'm glad you're mentioning that, because I'm sure our drivers will all appreciate knowing some things that they can help.
Well, you know what I'm hearing, Ruth Ann, in like his answers, I'm hearing experience. Trooper, you're answering as an experienced guy, like you said, like some of the troopers, and it's probably more your rookies, guys that are just starting out wanting to make a name for themselves, that need to ease up a little bit and start trying to understand the people they're out there. Because like you said, we all got to work together. I got a quick story for you, because we're actually 20 minutes over our normal time, but as always,
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right, brother. Man, that's why we bring you on, man. Hey, let me tell you something. I was getting ready to call you, and I said, Ruth Ann, guess who I'm going to call? She goes, Sensei. I'm like, okay.
Oh,
Sensei Hoover. So, but listen to this story. It's almost like what you're talking about as far as experience. I was in Allentown. This was 20 some years ago. I'm driving a track trailer. I'm in Allentown. I'm in delivery areas, and I'm actually in an alley area, and the snow is piled up as high as the trailer. And I'm coming through this alley to get to a dock. And a guy in a van decides to try to come like towards me, like as if there was enough room for us both to get, through this part. And there was no way. So he comes up, he's beside my tractor now, and he kind of slides a little, and now he's stuck. And I stop like, okay, buddy, if you move again, we're going to hit. So I said, I'm just going to back up. I look in my mirrors. Now, this is the problem that I was just telling people about earlier. You always got to get out and look. Always especially when you're backing, get out and look. So I look in my mirror. I look in my mirror. I look in my left. I look in my right. I do this for a couple seconds. I'm like, all right, there's nobody behind me. I would have had to climb up over the snowbank in order to run back there to see behind me. I'm like, okay, it's safe. I put it in reverse, and I start going backwards slowly. All of a sudden, all you hear is, boo, right? And all of a sudden, I see cop lights go on, and exactly. So I now I definitely am going to climb over the snow, pull on my brakes, and I start climbing over the bank, and I get back to the back of my trailer, and there's an Allentown city cop, right, and his hood, my ICC bumper caught his hood and made it pop up into the air, crinkled like. It was just the weirdest thing.
Oh, gosh.
And I'm like, oh, man, I'm in trouble here. He gets out, and he giggles. And you know what he says to me? He says, I guess I should have read that sign that says, if you can read this, I'm too close to you. If you can read this, you're too close to me. Back up. And he goes, and you're also lucky that I'm a 32-year veteran. He said, if it would have been one of the rookies, you'd probably be getting a big ticket. So I got nothing out of it. I closed his hood. It was barely a nick on his hood. He brought another cop in just to write it up. Nothing. I didn't get a ticket. Nothing. And he even said, listen, I shouldn't have been up against him, going through the alley. I should have gave him leeway. So that was experience there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and that's just it, because with law enforcement, you get those guys that, oh my gosh, they're going to go out, they're going to write whatever, they're going to, do whatever. And then you got, what I'm trying to preach is, guys, get some experience, realize what's going on. Don't just get into the truck division for the overtime. Get in it because you have a passion for what you're doing. Because those inspectors, and I work with a good group, and I had kind of a good, you might say a sensei moment, when I had one of my driver buddies sent me a text and goes, hey, I ran across your boy. He stopped me and gave me an inspection today. I was like, oh, really? How'd it go? And he goes, he was a real nice guy. You tell you taught him well, and that's just, because, and I'm the type that, you talk to me straight, I'm going to talk to you straight. You sit there, you start lying to me. I don't handle that well. I don't appreciate that well. And some people are like, well, yeah, but you need to realize you're a cop and everybody's going to lie to you. Yes, I get that. But the thing is, I can walk around a truck and I can tell real quickly if that truck's being looked at and taken care of. So when I walk up and I got my little yellow notepad 3/4 of the way full with everything I found, and I say, hey, driver, did you do a pre-trip this morning? And if he's, with it enough and honest enough to go, you know what? I was running late. I got in. I went. I would much rather hear that than, oh, yeah, I did a pre-trip. Everything looked good. Because it's like, I'm throwing the BS flag. Mm-hmm. I'm throwing it because there's no way you walk around this truck. I'd much rather you tell me. And one guy I was training one time, he goes, I got to ask you something. I said, yeah. He goes, now this is kind of, he goes, if you don't want to answer it, that's fine. But he goes, how come you wrote this one guy in the day a ticket for this, but then later on in the day, this other guy had this and you didn't write him? And I said, the big thing was honesty. I said, did you notice that the guy that wrote me a ticket, he was just, lying to us the whole time about everything? And the guy that said, yep, I know the 4 tires are bad. It's Friday. The boss said the tires were supposed to be in yesterday. They didn't show up, but they're supposed to be in on Monday. I said, I see this guy going up and down this road every week. I said, and he knows, by gosh, I'm going to stop him on Wednesday. And if he doesn't have those new tires on like he promised me, I'm going to go after him. I'm going to give him a ticket. But I said 9 times out of 10, I said he's going to have those tires fixed. I said, this guy that was lying to us the whole time, I said, no, if you're going to waste my time lying to me, what's the point? You know, I'm not going to cut you brakes for sitting here lying to me.
Yeah.
So
I agree with that. People say that all people actually go right into lie mode without even realizing. A lot of times I keep telling people, you don't have to lie. There's no reason. Even a little white lie. Some people say, well, you might want to lie to somebody so you don't hurt their feelings. I'm like, no, you don't need to lie to them. Just don't answer them if you don't want to hurt their feelings. But don't lie. You don't have to lie. You do not have to do it. It's your choice when you make that lie. Mm-hmm. So. Oh,
absolutely. And too, I've got a little bit of a way that I can talk. You know, when I first get up there, I typically I'll ask drivers, hey, how's your day going? How are things going? And I love it. Well, it was good till you stopped me. And I'm like, come on now. I said, you haven't even met me yet. I said, you probably don't believe it, but I'm the nicest guy out here, you know. And I'm not really lying because I'm the only guy out there. So I could be the nicest or I could be the toughest. But then again, I'm leaving it open for him to make that determination, you know. And I try to put the drivers at ease and yeah, I get those drivers. Man, I've been trucking 20 years and you're the first cop I can actually say I was fine taking the violation because you're a nice guy. And I said, well, you're not home cooking meth in your garage, stealing your neighbor's stuff. I said, you're out here working, you're paying your taxes, you're keeping society going. You deserve a lot more than that. So that's kind of my biggest mantra is why not try to work together? We got a higher power that we need to be thinking about.
Amen to that.
And all that. So
Ruth Ann, that almost reminded me of my mother-in-law. She always tells me I'm her favorite son-in-law. I'm her only son-in-law. So.
Exactly. She's not lying to you.
She's not lying.
She's got four sons and Ruth Ann, and I'm her favorite son-in-law. Always. Yeah. So, well, Trooper Hoover, we so much love having you come on as our confidant, as our man on the out in the battlefields.
Yeah, man on the dark side.
Boots to the ground guy. Yeah. I mean, it's great. It's great to be able to call up on you and get, you know, the advice and write out. And so, you know, obviously we'll be calling you back here soon here. Ruth Ann, did you have anything else for Trooper Hoover?
Nothing, just to stay really safe.
Ruth Ann, before we let Trooper Hoover go, do you have your word of the day?
Oh, I can open it back up. Yeah. My computer died, so.
So you don't have it, or you do?
I have to use my phone.
So you're not prepared.
Well, I didn't think of it. I mean, my word of the day went up on my site, my Facebook page, but I have like 5,000 I can get.
What kind of ticket should I give her for not being prepared? Should I? Can I write her up or put her out of service?
Well, see, I don't want to put her out of service because my computer likes to do the same thing. You close the lid and open it back up, and it decides to go black screen. You got to restart it. So.
Yeah, that's what mine's at right now. It's just like it just died.
You have it?
I have some
put
here.
Put it to your mic too, Ruth Ann. Ruth Ann's been doing the word of the day just about every episode now. She's got a little thing, and it gives us some weird word we've never even heard in a definition. You got it?
Hold on, I got to turn my volume up because I had everything turned down.
Turn it all up, Ruth Ann. Here we go. Ruth Ann's word of the day. Are we going now? Ruth Ann, right.
Hold on. I hit it and it went off.
Divaricate.
Do it again. Up to the mic.
Divaricate.
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 Spell it.
Divaricate. Divaricate.
Definition?
Stretch or spread apart, diverge widely.
Okay, so the redneck word is wallered, right? The lug nut hole was wallered out, right? So, but the official court term is divaricate.
Divaricate.
Yeah. Nice.
Ooh, I, in honor of you, I'm going to use that. Driver, come on back here. This lug nut hole is divaricated out a little bit. Really have them look at you, go, what? No, it's wallered out.
You need to talk. Tell them that's when you need to go to Ruth Ann at TalkCDL or Ruth Ann from TalkCDL on her Facebook page, and she gives the word of the day. every day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, we're going to wrap this one up. Trooper Hoover, we appreciate you coming on. Let us know when you can make it back on the show, and we'll
anytime.
mic you up. All right, Ruth Ann, we're out of here.
Stay safe, Trooper.
Stay safe.
Hey, thank you. You guys be safe. Have a good one now.
Peace.
You also too. Peace.
Praise the Lord.